Hey, welcome back to all of our viewers. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Nan.
I'm glad to be here for our last episode about Mission Control, A Big Feelings Adventure. We saved the main character for last because it's pretty fun to be able to talk about all the things that we've talked about from Joseph's perspective this time. And
That's
I'm
right.
excited
That's right.
to share some of the things that you and I did with when we were looking at trying to do NFTs with the book. And
Yeah, trying to.
yeah, yeah.
We
So
all know how that worked out.
yeah, it was fun though, and it
Yeah,
actually made me grow a lot by putting my thoughts down and making the website and working together. And it
yeah,
certainly helped me think through things and make me a better therapist and a better author and speaker also for these kinds of events. So I don't regret it, but I am sorry about the NFTs not quite going quite as exciting as we had hoped.
that's right.
The work that you did, the work we did together with the art that you did is fantastic, and I want to repurpose it. So we'll show a few highlights of that today.
Yeah, and that'll help with the future books too, because they have all these expressions now that Joseph has, and so yeah, it was good. It wasn't lost work, so it was good.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And you know, all of the books that I've been writing and will be coming out in 2024 are all about social and emotional uh, challenges for kids and all about protecting children's mental health, trying to give the most support possible for families, especially in this time when we're really coming out of COVID and living the consequences of that. And the referrals I get are still a lot about, I have a COVID baby, and the impact of that on social emotional development for kids is still really a big thing. So I think that having those pictures of Joseph with all the emotions, we'll have lots of fun things, games to create, and lots of fun that we can make from those pictures still. So we'll do that at the end of today. I wanted to go ahead and start talking about Joseph, from the story from Joseph's perspective and what there is to learn from what we see with him as a character. So I'll share my screen. Okay, so here we are with the title again. I'll go through this kind of like what we've done before, go through the story, but again, telling the story from Joseph's perspective. So, Joe, before we even start, do you want to tell how it was your idea for naming Joseph, even though
yeah,
that name, that's not really why we named him Joseph, but you had a really good idea about why to call him Joseph. I assume you remember that.
yeah, yeah. So he's not named after me. Um, but I named him after Joseph from the Bible. And the reason I did that was that he is always Joseph, the character, when Nan and I were talking, he's always kind of like daydreaming, and he's always in like another place, or he's consumed, like us, of course, with Spaceman Sam. But the way I envisioned him was that he's this kid that likes to daydream. So I was thinking, I was like, well, um, what if I just base him after Joseph from the Bible? And he was always interpreting his dreams. And so he could interpret dreams. And so I thought, okay, well, that's kind of a cool kind of correlation there. And then so that's why I named his spaceship the Dream Dart 11, because it correlates with the dreaming. And Joseph was the 11th son of 12. And so that's where the spaceship name came from. So
Right. But also, Joseph in the Bible had some tribulations like Joseph in the story.
correct. Right. So Joseph went through a lot in the Bible. And so everyone goes through things, but Joseph was always, he persevered, and he was disciplined, and he was just an honorable character and had good morals. And so that's what I was kind of going with Joseph. Like, regardless of what he was going through, he didn't hate, um, he was always loving. He understood what was happening, and was, even when he was falsely accused of doing certain things, that he still maintained his loyalty, and he always kind of took the right path. And that's what the hope for Joseph is, and the character in the book, is that he messes up, and at least he has a growth mindset. He's open-minded to correction. And that's the part that is, I think, is a kind of a difficult thing, is like just being, a dad, and soon to be granddad. And it's like having that growth mindset and being open to correction, and having that, the only way to do that is to be humble. And that's what Joseph, he's humble. He did have a little outburst, but he listened to mom, and he was able to come up with a solution. But before he came to that solution, we go off into this dream imagination land, on Kelvin, planet Kelvin, and going through the hypnozoids. And it was all just an interpretation of what was happening with having to turn the TV off and not wanting to do that. He wanted to see more of what Spaceman Sam was, his adventure. And so, but he grew from that confrontation with mom.
Exactly. And that's exactly what the point of this story is, but also the point of the whole series, is that we do watch him grow over the series. I mean, we have it all planned out, and we know where it's going to end. And in the end, yes, we do see that all of the challenges that he has, and the ways that his mom helps him grow and guide, and the way she guides him, are ways that really do lead to where we want to portray him in the end, with being like the things that you just said. Some people might call some of that like pro-social behaviors, being able to caring about others, contributing to goodness in the world, and being kind toward others, and being helpful, and thinking of others' needs, all those kinds of things. Same kind of thing. And being able to think outside yourself and see, where can I serve other people? And so we see Joseph developing those over the 6-book series. So you did a great job of summarizing that, Joe. Thank you. Did my job today. So here we are with Spaceman Sam that Joe alluded to, and that's the character that Joseph really, really loves and likes to pretend to be. Joseph is a little immature. He wants to do what's expected, and he does his best, but he's learning, and he's not good yet at being able to manage his emotions. And lots of grown-ups still are learning how to do that too. So no fault of Joseph's, but and as you said, Joe, like, so great that he was open to being guided and learning from it, and feeling good about himself in the end, which we'll see as we go through this. The other thing about Joseph is that he is pretty much the picture of the profile of the children I work with, which is why I could write the story, because the children I work with do have a difficult time managing disappointments, and having to wait for things, and not liking to stop doing something that they're enjoying doing, and doing something that they don't like doing. So the kinds of reactions that we see from Joseph in the story are very much like the kinds of the reactions that parents report to me that they're struggling with at home. So the point of the story was not only to show kids how Joseph grows through the story, and being able to relate the things that Joseph does to the things that are happening in their personal lives, but it's also to help the parents know, or whoever's reading the book to the kids, that these are ways that you can guide the children. And when I I mean, that's what I do when I'm in sessions with kids, is I do try to do exactly what's in the story, not only guide in the moment, but also guide afterwards for the growth, narrating through what happened so that kids can understand, like, they don't have the words necessarily. They don't really understand what happened. But what they all tell me is they don't want to feel that way. They don't want to have those kind of reactions, but they don't seem to know how it happens. And so being able to guide them and let them know, like, you didn't like this. And when you didn't like it, it was really hard to know what to do. And so you showed me with your big feelings what you were needing. And I was there to help you because I have an understanding of how important it is for me to play the role of someone who's calm and in control, to be able to help support you by reducing the demand that is on you in the moment, but also providing the support that's needed in order to be able to move into that imagination, which is what we see in the story here, where his mom, there's his big upset, and there's his mom doing just what I said, trying to help him. She's being the co-regulator in that moment, and she's helping him be able, she's acknowledging his feelings and helping him move, as you can see from the body language, from really, really upset to, oh, I could maybe figure out what to do myself because you helped me, you provided that support. And that's what he does in this part of the story. He goes into his imagination. And this is where he and Gretchen are on the spaceship in his imagination on planet Kelvin 273. And Gretchen now is playing the role of the mom, because he does need some support still, even in his own imagination. Kids still, even if they're trying to figure out what to do about a situation that feels uncomfortable, they still need some guidance from someone who can help. So Joseph goes through all the steps that Spaceman Sam talks about here of feel it. So in the big story, he goes through all of these 4 steps, but in the imagination part of his story, he goes through all of these steps as well. So we'll see that Gretchen's going to help him when he realizes he's having funny feelings in his head. She's going to help him by talking about it with him and helping him find a tool to calm, so that eventually he can solve the problem about what to do about doing something he doesn't really want to do. So he takes on the persona of Robojo. And at the end of the story, you'll see that Robojo is actually one of his toys that is in his room. And so he plays an important part in Joseph's imagination. And for kids, we all see kids doing imaginary play. And we often hear about when children experience some kind of distress because of maybe a change, like moving to a new house, or a more classic one might be losing a family member, like a grandparent or something. And how do you process that? Like, kids have ways of doing that through their imagination. And sometimes they do it more safely. It feels a little more safe for them to pretend about it than to actually understand, like we might as an adult. So he does have to fight the green hypnozoids in the story, because the green hypnozoids are the characters who, it's the feelings that he has inside, like, but I just want to have fun. I was having a great time. Why did you interrupt me from watching the TV show? And that's kind of what we all want. We all want to just like do what we kind of want to do. And Joseph's desire is to just keep watching TV. And so we know on one hand that he's battling that desire to do what he wants to do, while also knowing that he's expected to go to bed. And that, I think all people can relate to, of feeling like, well, I'd really just rather sleep in, or I'd rather stay at the party, or I'd rather keep reading this book, or whatever it is, because that sounds much more fun than paying taxes or doing homework or whatever it is. So we can all relate to, like, how do we as adults, or how do other people, other kids, different ages, work through that battle of wanting to do one thing, but knowing you should do something else. And because nobody likes that idea of should. But we all know there are things that we do have to do. And that's really, really hard for the kids that I work with. It's really, really hard for them to say, but I just want to play. So they're doing homework, they're homeschooled, whatever. And they're thinking, I don't like this. I want to just play. And the immaturity to some degree of understanding that there are things that we do, and even brushing teeth, that isn't really very much fun, but we have a longer view of it as an adult, that there's a huge benefit to brushing our teeth, although of course it's not any fun. But children don't have that long range view of, why would it be in my best interest to stop in this moment from watching TV and go to bed, because they can't see that tomorrow their day is going to go better because they had good sleep. So that's what is hard. It's not only hard to just do something you don't particularly want to do, but it's also harder when you don't really see the longer picture, the longer view of why you would do something like that. And so it's just more of a struggle, I think, for kids. So in this story, the hypnotron kicks in because the green hypnozoids have the little button that they push that activates the hypnotron that we see at the bottom of this page. And Robojo's, that's the group, that's the representation of the green hypnozoids. Like, I can keep you engaged in watching TV. Like, that's one of the biggest concerns parents bring to me, is turning off screen time. That's why I wrote the story the way it is. It's really hard for kids to turn off screen time. I'm having fun. Why would I stop having so much fun? But what it becomes is kind of a trap. And the hypnotron does trap Robojo. And Robojo is acting as Joseph. And because Joseph is wearing this blue
haptic.
Thank you, haptic suit. He does feel all the same things that Robojo feels, and vice versa. Robojo understands what Joseph is feeling. Notice that Gretchen is not feeling that way, because Gretchen's in control, just like the mom. She's being the co-regulator for him in that moment. And Gretchen sees, like, this is what kids tell me. I don't like how this feels. It's very uncomfortable, and I don't know what to do about it. And when these big feelings happen, this is what I imagine it must feel like for them. Like, I don't know how to get out of this. I need help. And so until Gretchen steps in to give the help, then the hypnotron does have control over Joseph and Robojo, and can actually hypnotize. And you'll see in a minute how Robojo's eyes change into hypnotized eyes. But Gretchen is there, present, watching, and she does in that moment recognize that he needs help. And he even acknowledges, like, my head feels funny. So now he's starting those 4 steps that he's learned from Spaceman Sam. And Gretchen is there to help work it out with him and to help him figure out what tool will help you right now, Joseph, because it's feeling really, really uncomfortable. And I see you don't like it. So on his gauntlet, he's got some choices on his sleeve there of things that he can do. So this is one of the things that I do with kids. And Joe made a handout that has blanks on the boxes and blanks on the picture where Robojo is being hypnotized. So I can help the kids create their own personal gauntlet. And then I laminate it for them and make it so it's wearable for them. So now they have a tool that they can actually use themselves at home. And sometimes they can think of all the ideas of how to fill in the boxes. And sometimes I give them ideas. But breathing, they all know about breathing, but it's not always easy for them. And sometimes it's kind of a trigger word for some kids. And what most of the kids end up just saying is sometimes they can ask for encouragement from a grown-up, or they can say it to themselves, or they know to take a break, or they think of something that does feel good for them, like petting a live animal or hugging a stuffed animal or something. Those are probably the things that kids most often come up with for ways that they think that will help them feel calmer. Sometimes I say something like listening to music, or lying down and taking a rest, or reading a book, or being able to find some way to shift their attention from their big feelings to something else that just helps them, because they're shifting their thinking in the moment. So distracting themselves from that. So it's not meant to be a distraction, because we want them to go through the feelings and learn from the incident. But sometimes, just when we are having big feelings about something, it is often helpful to just find something different to do and take your mind off of it, because when you come back, it can be easier. And I see that often with the kids I work with, that they're frustrated, they're with something I'm asking them to do, most typically something having to do with writing. And if I recognize they start to crumple the paper, or they start scribbling on the paper, or they do all kinds of avoidance behaviors, then I know it's time to take a break. So I'm playing the role of Gretchen then, and saying, oh, I see this is really hard for you. You don't like this. Let's take a break. So sometimes they're not in a place where they can actually think of what to do. So I often say, it doesn't look like it's a really good time. It's not a very good time to work on this right now. Why don't we take a break? I always come back to it, though. And when I do come back to it, it's always better. It's like a non-issue. So I do think that kids are pretty wise about what they know will be helpful to them. And pretty much what it is I just need to step away from this, and I can come back to it and be okay. So Joseph does have Gretchen support him by actually going into action. So she is going to help Rabojo get back in control. So she goes, but because she sees how the green hypnozoids are gleefully celebrating, because they think they've got control, because they did get Rabojo completely hypnotized, as you can see from the eyes. And so Gretchen is not daunted by that. She goes straight to the willpower box, uses her paw to scan it, and opens up the door. So she has access to flipping up the switch. So now he's got willpower. And that was Joseph's whole goal. And that's what parents can do with kids. It's kind of what I just described. I'm going to provide the support for you. I'm going to be the mastermind behind helping you learn from this situation. And I'm going to guide you in the direction that you will be able to eventually come to the thinking that I will be able to do this. I can do this because someone is giving me the tools. So here's some tools that are activated as a result of Gretchen stepping in to support, and the shield is coming down, so Rabojo can't be hypnotized anymore. And that's sort of like, it's not really the equivalent of turning off the TV, because if you really just went and turned off the screen, that would cause a big problem. But it is equivalent of removing the distraction. And then the laser pops out of Rabojo's head and then breaks the cables. And so this is when kids can start feeling like they can start the recovery process now, because the tools are helping them, and they're starting to feel free of these hypno cables that don't feel comfortable. And this is the beginning of, okay, things are going to get better now. I've got the help and support that I needed to be able to move on. And so Rabojo is showing us here, like, I did overcome that desire to just keep watching TV. I did defeat the hypnozoids. The kids do like the hypnozoids idea of defeating them. And sometimes kids come up with the idea of earning points if they can defeat the hypnozoids. And they like that power, that sense of I can do this. And they don't tend to have the concept of willpower. That doesn't seem to be something that I don't think any of the kids I've ever worked with have actually said, yeah, I know what that is. So it's a new concept for them to just, and it's what kids tell me when I ask them, you have homework to do, for example, and you don't like doing it. It's hard, it's time consuming, it takes way more time than you want to spend on homework because you want to just play, and it's much more effort mentally for you to put out than you want to, and you've just spent a whole day at school. And so they often let the parents know that that's what they're thinking. But then in the end, when I ask them, so how does the homework get done? They say, I just do it. And that's the best, probably, synonym for willpower, and from their perspective. So Gretchen is ready to come back in and reunite with Joseph. She's saying goodbye to Robojo. Joseph is back in control now. He doesn't need to pretend to be Robojo any longer. And here she comes. They have this great reunion. And again, this is that connection that's so important for kids to have with their parents, and to know that no matter what, that connection has not been broken from the beginning of the tantrum to the end, because the parent has found a way to stay in control. And we talked a lot about things that parents can do in order to make that step a little easier, even though it's still a very, very hard thing to do. But that's in another episode where we went through that. And this is where his mom is helping him learn about how he grew, which is what you were talking about at the beginning, Joe. And she's narrating through the steps that he went through to help him understand, like, what caused this to happen. It didn't just happen to you. And I think that some kids think that they don't know when it's going to happen. They don't seem to connect the dots, that when something's really hard to wait for, or something is a disappointment, or you heard the word no, I don't think they always make the connection that there is that little brief second where you can think through, like, what choice do I have here? I can have a giant reaction that it feels uncomfortable, or I can try to think, what have I done in other situations? That's not always, kids don't necessarily just think of that on their own, but there have been times when I've worked with kids where I've been able to see right before the meltdown comes, I'm able to talk to them logically, because it's not there yet, but it's on the verge, and they can think through what they make a choice. But often the reaction comes so fast that there's not really that moment, that little moment of time that they can do that in. So mom is helping him grow, and he's starting to realize, I can do hard things. I just worked it out in my mind with my imagination and turned off my control panel on my spaceship. So that's helping him. He's still retaining some of his imagination to help carry over into real life. And you can see his whole face, his whole demeanor, his body language, everything is much calmer now, because he solved the problem. And this is one of the things that I think is really important, and that I encourage with the kids I'm working with, is for them to solve the problem. Because if I try to suggest it, or even parents try to come up with an idea, because they know more about what goes on in their own home and can come up with different ideas than I can, usually the kids reject the ideas. They know better what they actually can do. And I've never had a kid come up with anything less than their very best. They're not, they always want to do the hard thing. They just need the support and the guidance. So this is mom helping him understand what happened, and remembering what it was like at the beginning, and how feelings can change, and they're not permanent. They can feel like it in the moment, but they do pass. So she's helping him understand, your feelings can change, Joseph. And that's one of the things that I try to help kids understand too when I'm working with them. And I think it has to be spelled out to them because I don't think that they process it as readily unless it is shared like this happened first, and then you did this, and then this happened as a result. And now the outcome is that you're feeling pretty good about yourself, which is the real goal, because then kids can learn from it and use that learning for the next time. And that makes it easier for the child to think about how they can manage the big emotions the next time something similar comes up. It also is an opportunity for his mom to say tomorrow night when it's time to turn off the TV, remember last night how you were able to do that? Do you think you can do it again tonight, just like last night? Remember how that felt? So she can encourage him and lay the groundwork for him to be successful by referencing something that went well through her guidance and ended up with his feeling positive, resilient, feeling like he can believe in himself that he could do that. So she's reinforcing those messages for him and helping him think into the future a little bit and believe in himself for the next time. And that's what the page is showing. There's Rabojo in the background, and then also it's showing that I'm feeling good about this. He's saying, I would like to feel in charge of my big feelings tomorrow. And he's saying, I believe in myself. I'm a kid who can do that. And here he is feeling, and my interpretation of that is that he's feeling like he has the tools. He's got Gretchen right there. He's got Rabojo right there. He's got Spaceman Sam right there. And he's got his imagination in his hands holding the rocket ship. He's got what he needs to handle situations that are uncomfortable for him going forward. He's not a master at it yet, but he's feeling like step by step, I'm going to be able to do that. And as we talked about at the beginning of the conversation today, that he indeed does get there by practicing step by step until we see him which is what we see as we go through the books and the series, that's exactly how he's growing, and that's how we all grow step by step. And so we applaud the milestones along the way. Every success, the more we can recognize anything close to the goal that we would like to see for a child in their development of their skills, is praiseworthy. And in the sense of what the mom was doing in the story a couple of pages back, I see that at first this was really hard for you. I see back here where she goes through the steps of what happened with his big feelings and how he was able to ultimately come to the solve it step. So being very specific about what happened and what the praise is that helps a child understand, when you do this, this is the outcome, and you like how that feels. So let's try to remember that for next time, because that is something that helps your brain grow and makes you feel proud of yourself. So, Joe, did you want to add anything more to the story before you share about the pictures?
Yeah, I was on mute. Sorry. No, I think you covered everything. Yeah, I was just going to talk about just the behind the scenes kind of thing for a little bit.
That's great.
Should I do that now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Did you want to go talk about the NFT, Joseph, or
Yeah.
okay. So I want to bring that up first, because in drawing Joseph, and really with any drawings, I'm working on some other books, and a lot of it is exploration. So when I was drawing Joseph, and I'll share my screen now, my iPad. So we'll stop yours.
Yeah.
And then,
okay.
And we'll start mine. There we go. So you can kind of see here, Joseph looks a little bit different. And what I kind of compare it to is if you go back to the early, probably maybe the first year or two that Charles Schultz drew Charlie Brown, all the Peanuts characters looked completely different than what we know them as now. And I think it's just kind of a growth thing. And when I was working on this project with Nan, doing the NFTs, I wanted to do it kind of like a standard Joseph pose, but then his expressions would change, or his clothing would change. And so by doing that, I try to simplify Joseph. And I think I finally feel pretty comfortable with how to draw Joseph in the future books. And it just has, I don't know, just kind of a funner, more cartoony feel to it as opposed to the way I drew Joseph. And I think the way I drew Joseph in this first book, it was kind of like more of like an anime style a little bit. And so I'm probably gonna go with more of, I want to call this more of kind of like a Pixar style feel to it. So that's one thing. And then one of the things that when I was working with Nan in the early stages, I really loved doing the storyboarding out in, again, the exploration of the character. And so you can kind of see here what I was going with. And at first, I mean, Nan was like, remember when we said it's not fair?
Yeah.
So this was kind of our first title, and it didn't it just didn't stick. And so when we talked about the spaceship and him going to this imaginary world to kind of figure out his problem, and so we thought, well, I was thinking spaceship, Houston, NASA, and then Mission Control. And so that's where, and it kind of played, there was kind of like a double meaning there with self-control and then mission control. So that's kind of where we came up with this. Okay, well, the next book is going to be Mission colon and whatever it is that we decide it's going to be. So so that was kind of a happy accident. But again, see, that's what you kind of find, these little pieces of the puzzle that all kind of fall together when we're doing all the preliminary storyboarding. Just kind of what I call kind of like a brain dump. It's like just put everything out there and let's just see what sticks. And so I really like, this is like the storyboarding process, what my ideas were when we were, it's like, well, what are the pages going to look like? So you can kind of see that everything that I drew kind of, for the most part, stayed in the book. I just basically just kind of fleshed it out and just made it cleaner. And yeah, we pretty much kept the integrity of all the storyboards. And which, with my background in working with animation studio, so much stuff gets tossed. But since I'm the producer, director, artist, illustrator, everything, so it's like I decide what to keep. And it's like, well, it works for me. And Nan was happy with everything, so we decided to just stay with it. And yeah, everything worked out well. And the other part of the process too, with drawing all this, there's a messy page. This was, I was trying to figure out like a good way to capture Mom speaking with Joseph. And it's like different angles. I'm trying to think of different camera angles, what I call camera angles, what's going to be interesting. This changed a little bit, but the room looks a little bit different. And so, yeah. So, and then just a little behind the scenes thing too. It's like, I like to draw in 3D models. So this is what the spaceship looked like in the beginning. So I have a program that I use to do some of my 3D models. And then that's like my base. And then I do my draw overs. And so what's nice with working in 3D It's like I build the model and then I can move the camera around within my program to get the most interesting angle that's going to work for the story. And a lot of what I've been noticing a lot lately is a lot of artists that I follow, children's book illustrators, they're doing the same thing, and they're using an Adobe. It's everyone works differently, but they all kind of come to kind of the same ending. And some use Adobe and use Photoshop, and they do there's a program in Adobe where they do 3D modeling, and you can move things around, and then they draw on top of it. And other people, like what I do, I use Lightwave and I use Procreate. Other people use Photoshop. So, it's just a tool, and everyone has different tools they use, but you end up with the same thing. And a lot of what you're really aiming for is the story. Like, what are we trying to say here? And so my drawings are just lend to the story. If the story is not good, I don't care how good the drawings are, it's not going to appeal. People need to be interested in what they're reading and getting a message out of it. So, this is just complimentary. And so, yeah, we're really looking forward to, here's another 3D model. So you can see what I was working with, just basic shapes for Robojo. And like when he's falling, like, okay, what was a good angle? Like, here we go. Here's the side of the head, all that kind of stuff. So it's fun. Some people might think it's like, oh, it's overkill, but it's like, that's the way I work. So,
Yeah, I haven't seen those before of Robojo.
Oh, really?
I haven't seen that. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. So, but again, so going back to Joseph and why I thought he was just a fun character to draw, and where we can go to a lot of different places with him and his growth is, and also with me being a teacher for 6 years, working with TK in kindergarten, first grade. And it's amazing to me, like how, in teaching the computers. Okay. So that's the hard part. But it's amazing to me, just by the age 6, 7, they're already down on themselves, and they, I can't do this, I can't do that, I stink at this. And they need people in their lives to encourage them, and that was like how I approached this. Like, I need to be a good role model and showing them, you can do this. You have to, I'm not going to use the word growth mindset, but I'm demonstrating that in how I teach. And it's like giving them self-esteem. And the main thing, whether I'm working with kids or now in my role is like working with adults at IT, it's like, just this, again, what I'm teaching you is I'm teaching you how to use a tool, and you have to have ownership. You can take pride in learning this because it's going to help you in the future. You don't have to be so dependent on other people to help you do things. It's like you should take a little pride in that someone's teaching you how to take ownership of something, so that maybe you learn it well enough, you can teach somebody else. So, you just kind of, paying it forward. And so that's always been kind of my goal, is just like encourage these kids, encourage the students to just, it's okay to fail. Everybody fails every day, but it's like, what do you do when you fail? Are you going to get down on yourself, or are you going to learn from what you did, not necessarily wrong, but where you maybe have room for growth? And one of the teachers I used to work with, what was it? I'm trying to think of the word. I'll get back to it. I'm having,
Was it grit?
it was a saying. It's like
Oh.
that, every day we're like getting a little bit better. It's like, but it's a term that we use, but then she changed it around a little bit.
Made a word play on it.
Yeah. But I'll if I can think of it,
Okay.
I'll get back. I'll throw it
Okay.
out there.
Okay, great. Watch
Yeah.
for it on social media or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Joe, that's great perspective, because that's we're on the same page. We both have similar experiences through our work and raising our own kids and all of that. So that's what's made it a compatible relationship too. That
Yeah.
I'm not teaching you about things you already know, but from your own experiences. And I just have a different angle on it from you. So
Right.
it's a great way to work together. So
Mm.
I've always appreciated that. And so this is our last one. This is all the characters in the book. So Joe and I are going to do, we talked about having a Q&A. We're going to end this one and then start another episode with talking about things that are behind the scenes again between the two of us. And also coming up is going to be an event in December. So that's an opportunity for people to come on and connect with us live again. And it's a time where you might start thinking about buying the book for holiday gifts. So it's people have been asking me that, because with the extra book, the additional books that are going to be coming out, probably the next one that comes out will not be related to this series, but will be another one that Joe and I worked on together called Tijuana Mañana, the Anxious Iguana. So with that in mind, people have been asking me, like, well, when can you get those out before the holidays? So it started making me think about, well, that one's probably not going to be. I tried to make it come out before the holidays, but it's taking a little bit longer. So, but we do have one that can be a gift for the holidays for anybody who's interested. So look for more about that. But of course, now it's available on Amazon. But next month, we will have another event, and we'll be sending out notices about that. So stay tuned. And of course, if you ever have any questions or you don't get the information about the upcoming event, you can always contact me at info@thebadgesofpower.com, info@thebadgesofpower. So with that, let's say goodbye for now, and we'll see you on the next episode with Q&A time. Thanks, Joe.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.